We're looking at how to set up your scouting and recruitment team on Football Manager 2024. Now, this guide is primarily focused on new or returning players, but there should be enough extra hints and tips sprinkled throughout this to be a benefit for even the most seasoned of veterans. Now, first, we're going to head to the staff screen of your club, and here we are greeted with an overview of three distinct areas of our backroom staff. We get an overview of our coaching team, our recruitment team, which is today's focus, and our medical team. Now, it's obvious that we're going to go and have a look in more depth at the recruitment team today. You've clicked on this video for a recruitment guide. This overview gives us an at-a-glance view of the recruitment team, its makeup, and how it compares to the rest of the league. Now, the first section shows the number of staff members that you have in each role. It's quite self-explanatory, and it also shows the number that the board have allowed you to have. So if you've got vacancies there you go. It quickly highlights the vacancies that you've got and you might need to fill. There's also a drop down to request to the board to increase wage budgets for various roles, request additional roles to be added, or even place an advert for any vacancies that you may have identified. Now, the recruitment team is made up of 6 potential staff roles, and depending on the size of your club, you may have all or just some of the roles available to you. Now, the key part of the recruitment team are the scouts, and then by extension, the chief scout. These are the staff members actively watching other players and assessing their current and potential ability and making a judgment on how these players would fit into your squad. Without them, good recruitment becomes almost impossible. Now, after scouts, we have recruitment analysts whose primary job is to analyse the statistics and the data available on players to enhance those scouting reports that your scouts have already provided. They'll complete an analyst report, which is then supplementary to that scouting report and can provide extra insight into a player. So the bigger clubs have more of these and become more reliant on them. If you're a smaller club, you probably don't have many recruitment analysts, if any, depending on the level you're playing at. Now, the final 3 roles, they are very much a nice to have once you get into bigger leagues with more budgets. Now, these roles can be moulded much more around different aspects of Football Manager which you would rather not do, or you could need assistance with. So the first one of this is the Director of Football. Now, this can be a staff member that you simply use to recommend the odd player signing, through all the way up to being completely responsible for all incoming and outgoing transfers and contract offers and contract extensions. So equally, the Technical Director can play a similar role for your backroom staff. So you can just either get advice on which staff members should be sent on coaching courses, all the way through to the technical director handling all recruitment and contracts for your backroom staff. So it's kind of similar to the Director of Football in that way. Depending on what you want from these roles should dictate whether you want to hire a member of staff and what attributes you should be looking for when you are doing so. So the final role that will be in this section is that of the Loan Manager. Again, this can be used for a varying amount of tasks depending on what you like to handle as a manager. The loan manager will provide reports on all players who are out on loan at any time, but they can also be used to handle all loan moves for players on your loan list and negotiate all aspects of the loan deal if you don't want to do that yourself. So if you're hoarding a load of young players who all need to be sent off on loan, then having a good loan manager in place might be worthwhile, as it takes some of the loan off your shoulders, unless you like negotiating 50 loan moves a season, in which case, well, if you're holding that many players, you probably do, in which case you can do all that yourself and you don't need a loan manager. But you can basically, as we've said, with the Director of Football, the Technical Director, the loan manager, you can mould what these staff members do depending on what you like and what you don't as part of Football Manager, and going through the process of learning what you like and what you don't, you can use these staff members to help you do that, essentially. So going back to the overview page, you can see here that the 3 key recruitment attributes of judging player ability, judging player potential, and analysing data, and you can see how they stack up for your team compared to your direct competition within the league. This can give you a good idea of whether you need to improve your scouting team and help identify any weak links. So if you've just been promoted into a new league and you think your team is red hot because you've been top of the league below on all of these areas, but you come in and you are right near the bottom, you need to improve them. If you come in at the top, then you are correct. You are red hot in these areas, but it highlights them quite an easy way to see where you stack up against the rest of the league. Now, the final area we need to look at within the staff page is staff responsibilities. Now, this whole section is massive, but we're going to focus on the scouting section. So if you go to the drop down of responsibilities and click on scouting, you'll be greeted by this page. There are a couple of tasks which you can control or delegate depending on your preferences. and a few tasks which you need to set to preferred staff members. The 2 tasks that you can control are the assignment of your scouting team, so you can either have complete control over which scouts complete which assignments, or you can delegate that to your chief scout or your director of football or whoever appears on this list. It's completely dependent on how complex or specialist your scouting needs are and how hands-on you want to be. You can also delegate the handling of scouting meetings, which are generally looking over what the recruitment focuses, which we'll cover properly in a second. You have running or potential ones to look at and take place during your scheduled staff meetings. This can be delegated to the director of football or any of the scouting staff as well. You then get 4 areas where you need to pick the most appropriate member of the team to provide you with feedback or reports. This looks at feedback on your current scouting, the scouting and analysis of your next opposition, and the analysis of your own team. These are all pretty self-explanatory of what they are, and they can be delegated to scouts, recruitment analysts, or even performance analysts as applicable. Okay, now that we are familiar with our recruitment team and we've made any improvements or additions where necessary, let's have a look at actual recruitment in game and what you can do. So if we go to the scouting tab, you'll be greeted with a page that looks a little bit like this, and depending on how far into your time at the club, this page will look different and have more things on it or less things on it. It's completely dependent on where you are in the season and how long you've been at the club. But you can get a clear indication of whether you have an open or closed transfer window, if you didn't already know, along with an overview of your budgets and the scouting package that you are currently utilising, if you are utilising one. If you don't have any money in your budget, you might not have one, like this example right here. The package dictates where you can and can't send your scouts, ranging from the whole world down to just players known to your backroom staff. If you aren't sitting on a scouting budget that allows you access to the whole world all year round, it might be useful to get creative with how you use your scouting packages. So it may be worth optimizing this at different times of the year around the transfer windows, where you might want to opt for a more expansive package for a short period of time to allow a broader scouting network, and then narrow it down really much into a tight window when into a tighter package, when the window is closed. This optimization of your scouting budget may allow you to uncover players that you would otherwise have missed, but it does come at the expense of building a stockpile of scouted players all year round. So it swings and roundabouts which one you want to do. If you want to focus in one transfer window and just get a load of players who you might not have found otherwise, so you can sign them, that would be one advantage of doing this. But if you want to have that constant list building up, where you're constantly looking at players who are your scouting and having a big stockpile of players you could potentially look for when a window opens, you might want to have the same package all year round, if you follow my drift. Okay, you can also see an at-a-glance overview of your recruitment focuses, the scouting recommendations, and the scout coverage from this overview screen. If you click into the scouting coverage, you can see a map view of where your scouts are currently assigned, as well as a view of your club's knowledge of various regions around the world. So this knowledge comes from hiring staff from different regions with pre-existing knowledge of different regions, or from assigning scouts to different regions to build up this knowledge base. The more knowledge of a region, the quicker and better results you will gain from scouting there, but you can obviously build that knowledge up through time. By going into the recruitment focuses section, you can now see all of the focuses you have, both active and completed, and the players found by your scouts that match the criteria for each one. Along with the recommended players, you will also be able to see near matches and misses who have just missed out on a small part of the criteria, and also the players who are currently being scouted in an attempt to judge them against said criteria. This is all well and good for active and completed focuses, but how do you set up a focus or edit an existing one? And you can press the pen icon on any focus to go in and change the recruitment settings, or you can also just remove any focus at any time as well. But in order to create a new focus, you click on the create recruitment focus button and open up the wizard. It's quite simple and straightforward. You need to have a set tactic set, however, before you're going any further, because you want to look for players who fit your tactic, potentially. So if you're brand new to the club, you'll need to go in and set one before coming back to the recruitment focus page. Even if it's just something temporary as a placeholder, you need something set to be able to get properly into this section of the game. You can then select a position based on any of the tactics you've got loaded up, or if you select all from the drop down, any position in the game. You can also widen your search to include any position from tactics, as well as or just a handful of positions. So you can have one position, two positions, four positions. You can have the whole back line, for example. Or once you have those positions selected, you can also specify player roles and the player's proficiency at performing in that role. You can also specify whether you want a player that you are looking for to either replace, or basically you can set a player to try and hone your scouts down to kind of match the player and replace that player, to really further hone into your results and to get specific players that you're scouting for. Once you have selected a position or positions, you can then specify whether you are looking for a permanent transfer or loan targets or both, or whichever one you want. You're then given a choice of star rating for both current and potential abilities. Now, be careful not to narrow the field too much of potential players here, because the star ratings are all relative to your own squad, so you've got to be careful where you set them. It's probably better, to begin with at least, to be a little bit lower than you want, just so you've got more options here, because we know star ratings can be quite fickle depending on form and everything like that throughout the season. We got a video on star ratings from FM23, which is still very much applicable for FM24. So if you're looking for potential wonder kids, for example, set the current ability to a sensible low level and the potential higher. But remember, if you've already got a high quality squad, you may want to set these a little bit lower than 5-star, for example, to avoid removing every potential target off the back. So if you're Manchester City, don't set potential to 5-star, because you'll not find anyone, or very, very few players, and they'll be very expensive. If you're struggling to find targets, it's a bit of trial and error here that will really work wonders and really enhance what you're getting out with recruitment focuses. So if you're finding that you're not finding any players, or you're finding too many players, go back in and revise, and basically you'll start to learn what fits best for the club you're managing. You'll get a feel of the star rating of existing players who are of a similar kind at your club already. Okay, so once you've selected the ability preferences, you can also select an age range and also go into selecting the areas for which scouts will look for these players. This can be anything from a specific competition to a nation, a number of nations, in-game regions or continents, or it can be left empty and set to any available area depending on the scouting package that you have. Note that the wider range, the longer it will take to get results back, because your scouts have got to go and look in more places. Also factoring your existing knowledge of areas at the club, so when thinking about timeframes for results, you have the option then to set whether this is a priority focus, so the higher priority, the more time it will use up with your scouts, and take heed of any warning that the game gives you here as well, that your scouts may already be too busy, and have a look at your existing focuses, what can be changed on those or joined together, so you're better utilising your scouts' time. You then have the option to assign either specific scouts and analysts, or leave that up to your chief scout or whoever you've set to delegate that to in the staff responsibilities to figure out how best to use your recruitment team. The final option on the main details is whether to include results from other focuses in with this one, and that's never really a bad option as far as I can tell. So if you've already scouted players which match your needs, you can take another look at them because you might have missed them. Now you've set a specific focus and they appear in your list. You might take a second look and they might be the right player for you. There are further details which you can set, which can drill down even deeper into the players you are looking for. But if you're too restrictive here, it will impact on your results. So consider how specific you want to be and what you want to be looking for when setting these up. Okay, after setting a new recruitment focus, you might find that players appear immediately, and these will be already known to the backroom staff or have already been scouted previously and match the criteria that you've set. If you leave the recruitment focus to run for a while, you should start to see the ongoing tab fill up with recommendations and near misses. Any player that has been scouted will have a scout report, which has a high level recommendation that takes into consideration the player's current ability, potential ability, both of which are shown as star ratings in the opinion, just the opinion of that scout, but also the expected transfer value and wage expectations of the player, how interested they are in the transfer or the loan move, and how they would fit into your playing squad. The detailed scouting report will give you all of these bits of information, along with a list of pros and cons about the player, and give you all the detail that you should hopefully need to make a decision on whether you want to move forward with a deal to bring this player to your club. Okay, aside from the traditional scouting methods, you can also get your director of football, if you have one, to make signing suggestions for specific positions under a couple of different criteria. So if you go to the transfers page and then find the director of football drop down and head to suggest transfer targets, you can then select a position and whether you want the suggested transfers or loans, end of contract targets or free transfers. This will give you up to 3 targets based on this small criteria that your director of football highlights. If you don't have a director of football, this task will still be there. You can just get your assistant manager to do it, or even a member of the board if you haven't got any backroom staff yet at all. These suggestions can be a little bit hit and miss depending on the attributes of your director of football or member of staff who's doing it. And if you're using a board member, you can't see their attributes, so who knows, it could be anyone. These suggestions, as we've said, are really useful if you are playing in a real low league save and you haven't got many staff or little scouting budget to play around with. You can just find a load of free transfers, bring them in on trial, test them out against the rest of your squad, and sign them if they are an improvement. Another area of suggestions comes whenever you hire a new member of backroom staff. Regardless of whether they're in recruitment, coaching, or medical, you can ask them to recommend a signing, and then they will recommend a handful of players from either their area of knowledge or former clubs, and these will appear in your scouted players list at some point in the not too distant future. So we've covered all of the areas of recruitment within game, but there are a few key tips for when setting up your game. So you can toggle attribute masking on or off, depending on whether you want to see every player's abilities by default, attributes by default, or whether you want to unmask them as your scouts, as you scout and become more familiar with them. It's worth noting that scouting players does not just uncover attributes, it can also highlight their personality and their hidden attributes as well as, so even with attribute masking off, scouting is still a key part of the game. Just because you can see their attributes, you don't know everything you need to know about whether you should sign this player or not. You can also influence your ability to recruit players by altering the database size of your game. So options of small, medium or large, and they show the estimated number of players in your game world. You can also go one step further by adding in players from specific nations or continents as well to flesh out your game world further and add more players in. Experiment here to find the happy medium of a save that doesn't take forever to process but also has a fleshed out game world with enough talent to go around for you to search. So that's all for our beginner's guide on recruitment within Football Manager 2024. If you are a bit of an experienced player and you've got some more tips, please share them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. It's great to get everyone's views on board. So once you've done that, hang around for the next video, like this one, subscribe to the channel, and check out this because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching.